Hello, everyone. My name is Sheila Kelly. Welcome to Shift, Real Stories of Real Transformation with Real People. I'm delighted to have a wonderful woman named Karen Dean join us today. And when she gets more fully on camera, you'll discover that there are some clues about who she is and how she likes to show up in the world. I'm looking at her background and I see her Nova Scotia license plate. Yes, she's from Nova Scotia, Canada, where I'm also from. And her license plate is fierce. And as I've heard more and more of Karen's story, it's a perfect descriptor of who she is and who she's had to be to not only survive in the world, but to thrive. She's also written a book called Unbreakable, which is a Canadian bestseller. And I'm just delighted to have her join us today. She describes herself as a self-made resilience expert. And before we hit record, I asked her what was the biggest shift in her life, because she's had circumstances that forced her to shift in ways that I think she and I agree we wish we wouldn't have to shift. For example, we both have had sons who, when they were teenagers, were diagnosed with cancer, and we're part of a club of mothers whose children have had cancer, whom we wish we didn't have to be a part of. We wish we weren't part of that club, but we both are delighted to say that both our sons are alive and doing well, and we always knock on wood when we say that. So Karen, welcome. I'm going to turn this part of the recording over to you so you can tell us about the biggest shift that you'd like to share with us.
Sure. Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here. And I also want to point out, I'm not the only author of the book. It's my story and 21 other women's stories, and they all wrote their own stories. So it's a really unique collection of stories that are in their voices. And they're all about resilience, which is what I'm all about these days. And so my biggest shift of the many, I think the most influential shift that I had was a really nasty divorce, actually my second divorce. And it was, I think that was the catalyst for me completely changing the person that I was. I had grown up in a house where I was quite obviously not the favorite child, bullied in school, a people pleaser, was always trying to do things that I thought were going to make other people happy and never put myself first. Didn't love myself, didn't think I deserved love, got into two really horrible marriages. And when the second one ended in a way I could never have imagined, I thought I need to figure out who I am. And I need to figure out how I can parent 3 children through what I was hoping the hardest thing we would ever have to deal with. It turned out things got worse. But how do I parent 3 children through this to be good humans? How do I find the strength in myself to do this? Because I can remember in my first marriage, an abusive marriage, sitting and talking to my friend on the phone going, I can't be a single mom. And at that time I had 1 child and she was only 2. I'm like, I can't do this on my own. How can I be a single mom? I don't even have a job, because my ex-husband had told me he would look after everything and I didn't have to work. I could just be the mom and be home with the kids. So the second husband convinced me to leave a job. I had a federal government job. I left that job to run our dairy farm with him. So now I'm forced into single motherhood and I don't have a job and I have 3 kids. So that was like, okay, I need to figure this out. And I need to build a life for these kids that shows them they have one person in their life they can trust, one person they can rely on, one person who's a good role model for them. And I also needed to find that for myself to know that I had the strength to do this, that I could do really awesome things, that I was worthy of being loved. And the most important love that I didn't have was for myself. And I bet you if there are other women listening, they can relate to that. And that was the biggest shift for me.
So yes, and I can hear that it took you down a path towards self-love, and it feels like it was birthed out of love for your children.
It
Out of
really
love for them, the word that's coming to me, I need to repair myself.
Yes.
So tell us about that journey. Tell us about that path that you found yourself on.
Well, the realization really came to me. There was a fellow dairy farm woman who lived not far from me, and she was a life coach. And she posted on her Facebook that she was doing, it was called Inner Boot Camp. And at the time, it was $150. And I didn't think I was worth that kind of money to invest in myself, but I bit the bullet and gave her $150. And we had a one-on-one meeting. Most of them were group meetings, but we had one-on-one. And I told her a lot of the things that had happened in my life. And she said, "What have you done to make those things happen in your life?" And I said, "What do you mean?" Like, I'm like, these people abused me. They abused my children. I was angry at first. And then she said, "No, stop." And she gave me a postcard. I actually have it right here. I
Hold it
say
up.
it all the time. I will tell you what it says because it's my
Okay.
mantra. But it took me 2 years to be able to say these words. She said, "Take this home, put it by your bathroom mirror, and say these words out loud to yourself every single day." And I couldn't do it. The words are, "I deeply and completely love myself." I honestly couldn't do it. And when I do speaking engagements and ask women to repeat those words with me, most of the women in the audience can't say those words. Or if they do, they start crying.
Mm.
And that powerful statement became my goal, was to be able to look myself in the eyes in a mirror and say that and feel like I meant it. And that started my journey of realizing you don't love yourself. You have never loved yourself. And the reason you ended up in these 2 horrible marriages was because you thought that's how you deserve to be treated, because that's how people have always treated you. And I had to learn to take responsibility for my part in that, because I allowed those people to treat me like that. I didn't stand up for myself. I didn't say, "No, you can't disrespect me like that." And it had happened in my family my entire life. So I just thought that's how things were. So it became a lot of learning how to set boundaries and learning to look at people who are supposed to love you and say, "No, you can't talk to me like that." And "No, you can't walk all over me and then expect me to sit down for Thanksgiving dinner with you the next day." Um, it was a lot of things like that about finding the strength within myself to be who I am, not who other people told me I had to be.
Where are you on that journey now?
I am a lot farther ahead. I don't think that journey ever ends for any of us, because the people around us continue to change. You may set a boundary with one person, but then somebody else comes in your life and they're always here for a reason. So you always hear the reason, the season, what, I forget that exact one, but I've had to look at things as, what is this trying to teach me? Are these people real, authentic, genuine? Do they like me for me? So people continue to come into your life and continue to challenge that. And I think it's a forever journey, but I am so much further ahead now. Sad realities is I haven't spoken to my parents or my brothers for 6 years. That was a Thanksgiving dinner conversation. They called me names I've never been called before on Saturday and invited me for dinner on Sunday. And I said, no, I'm absolutely not doing that. I did have a conversation actually yesterday with my father, and it was terrible because I said, can we try to fix this? And we can't. So I think it's a constant journey. And like I said, I am way further ahead. I really love my alone time now. I can never say I'm bored. I can never say that I'm not happy or I'm not grateful. I really see things a lot brighter now than they ever were. And I can, on Sunday at I had a Reiki session last week, and she challenged me to have 5 hours of silence, like no phone vibrating. If I had to communicate with my dogs, I was not to talk. I had to use hand signals. You know, you could still do things, just not talk and not communicate. And it was a powerful experience. And I thought I couldn't have done that before. I could not stand 5 hours with me. And by hour 3, I was just sitting there with a big smile on my face. I'm like, this is the best. Like, you are so worthy of happiness and of success and abundance and whatever that looks like. To me, success was raising 3 kids. And I'm like, you're worth this. And I think, especially women, and I know some men too, men don't have this conversation as much as women do, but I think they feel it. But it's a powerful place to be when you can find that strength in yourself and when you can sit alone with nobody around you and feel fulfilled. And I'm so happy to be in the place that I am now. I'm so grateful for all of the terrible things that led me to where I am today. So many life lessons learned, and I could never say that I regret any of it. Had I had this knowledge when I was 20, I probably would have made some different choices, but I wouldn't have the kids that I have. I wouldn't have the home that I have. I wouldn't be able to sit here and have these conversations and help other people. So I think my journey has been, the universe had to teach me these things so that I could help others. And that's the mission that I'm on now, is how do I help as many people as possible so that they don't have to experience the things I experienced to learn the things I've learned.
Beautiful.
Thank you. It's been a journey.
Yes. Well, I can tell that you are a powerful teacher. Your story is powerful. I was really taken with your mention of gratitude, because I think there's a propensity for people to think that being grateful is often focused only what we would label good. This good thing happened, this good thing happened, this good thing happened. And what you've articulated is something that I really believe is that it's important to be grateful for everything.
Yeah.
Because everything can serve a purpose if we give ourselves permission to do so, and if we're wise enough to understand. So if you could give one piece of advice to somebody who's struggling, maybe somebody who's in an abusive relationship, what's your one piece of advice?
Well, first, I think the word you said that's most important is permission. We have to give ourselves permission to be us. And the advice that I would give is find a safe person that you can lean on and make a good plan. There are so many resources out there. I am fortunate in some ways. I didn't need a shelter. I got out the night before I left my first marriage for the probably 200th time in 10 years. He threatened to shoot me in the head as I drove out the driveway. I'm happy. I'm grateful that he didn't do that. And that I'm here today to help other people. but I know the fear that maybe that person might act on that. I know the fear that if you do leave, that it's just going to get worse. So many women stay in situations that are unsafe because the old saying, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. But there are resources, there is help. You need to find that. You need to make a plan and have a safe place to go. There are organizations that can help with that. Shelter Movers is a newer organization that actually comes to your house and moves your stuff for you, finds storage for you, and gets you to a safe place. So it's important to find that safety. And behind that, it's important to believe that you are worthy of being safe, and that you are worthy of having a healthy relationship, and that you're worthy of being loved the way you're supposed to be loved. And the most important love is for yourself, that you believe that you're worth it. So that's my very long advice to women, or even men. I know there are some men that are in abusive relationships as well, but believe that you're worthy of something better than that. And for God's sakes, if you're raising children, teach them to not abuse people. I think this world that we live in can change if we, as parents, teach our kids to respect others, to love others, to not abuse people.
Mm.
And I think a lot of that comes from their own fear of loss, of not being enough, of not loving themselves. And I think we really have to start empowering our kids with the love and the belief that they are worthy, and that they are strong, and that they don't need to put other people down to make themselves feel good. That's a whole other conversation, but I really think we have to start changing that narrative and change this world that we live in, because domestic violence is an epidemic right now.
It's getting worse. Is that what you're saying?
It actually, the statistics show that it got significantly worse during COVID when we were on lockdown, and it hasn't really improved. And, we're in a mental health crisis, and all of these things go back to our childhood. Because when we are 2, we believe we can do anything. We can be an astronaut, we can be a firefighter, we can be whatever. We can be a fairy or a dragon when we're 2. But the adults in our lives knock that out of us as we get older. Unconsciously. I mean, we don't mean to do that to our kids. It's not intentional, but it's generational. That has always happened. And I think we need to really step back and look and think, what is realistic? We can't, obviously, there can't be a dragon, but not to take their self-esteem and shatter it, but to teach them how to love themselves, teach them coping mechanisms for when things get hard, because they're going to get hard. Teach them that if somebody says something negative to you, that you don't respond with a punch or an insult back, but how do you take what they've said to you and go, that really isn't about me. That is about their experience that they are just projecting onto me. And I think that's a big belief, is that what people say to us usually isn't about us. It tells a lot more about them. So many life lessons that I think we have to teach our kids. The biggest one is how to cope when things get hard.
How do you love yourself through it?
Yes.
How do you love yourself through it? How do you have enough love to get through it? And you're saying something that I believe is that it's not always innate, or if it is innate, we've forgotten it. And so we need teachers and wise people to remind us of the truth, perhaps that we always knew.
Mm-hmm.
We need to be reminded of them.
Yeah. One of the quotes I use in my speeches is, you have everything you need inside of you to get through whatever life throws at you. but we
Exactly.
don't always believe that. And we don't know how to find it, because I have so many people say, you're so strong, I could never do that. And I'm not resilient. And I'm like, yes, you are. And no, I'm not any stronger than you. I just figured out how to use the tools I already had to get through some really hard things.
Yeah, you tapped into some wisdom that maybe you didn't even know you had, right? And you've reminded me that when my son was going through cancer, when he was 17, somebody said, "Oh, God would never give my son cancer because I'm not strong enough to handle it." And
Wow.
it's like, seriously? You think that my son has cancer because I'm stronger than you? No, I don't think that's how it works. I don't think
No.
that's how it works. But again, people say things that make them feel better.
Yes.
She needed to feel safe that it couldn't happen to her.
Right.
And again, she made it about God, who she perceived as being outside of her. So we could have a long philosophical discussion about,
Yes.
yeah, does God give children cancer? Hmm. I can't believe that one. But yeah, so the theme I keep hearing from you is self-love, self-love. To get to that point where you look in the mirror and you can look at yourself deep in the eyes and say, I love you and you are worthy.
Mhm.
And what a journey that is, and what a journey it's been for you. I
Yeah.
do have one question for you.
Mhm.
Um, where 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 in the body do you think that lives? That sense of self-love and worthiness?
I think it bounces between our heads and our hearts,
Mhm.
because it has to be in both. Um, but Sunday, when I was in my 5 hours of silence, I was beaming really from chest up when those realizations start coming to me, and when I'm looking around going, wow, look where you are now. And I physically feel it in my heart sometimes. In my chest. I physically can feel it's heavy, but it's bright, if that makes sense. I don't know how to describe it. Like, it's this really heavy feeling, but it's not a heavy ugh feeling. It's a heavy wow feeling. And I feel that more frequently now than I ever did before. And the conversation I had with my father yesterday, 10 years ago, that would have ruined me. I wouldn't be able to have this conversation with you today. But I came home, I did some really deep breathing. I had a full-blown panic attack, but I breathed myself through it. I talked myself through it. I'm like, this isn't about you, Karen. And I talked to a friend, and she's had a different journey than me, doesn't have all the same tool, well, doesn't use all the tools like I do. And she said something that kind of alluded to that it was about me. And I said, no, that conversation wasn't about me. That conversation was about him and his beliefs and his inability to deal with the truth in this situation. And I said, it wasn't about me. And so I wouldn't have been able to come to that 10 years ago. But I've done so much work to realize, you know what? That's his journey. And that's not my journey. And I don't have to own his journey. I just have to keep living my life.
That boundary setting thing.
Boundaries are tough, but you know, you really have to have them if you want to live your best life. And it's not selfish or arrogant or egotistical to want to live your best life for you. Because when you live your best life for you, you have so much more to give to everyone else in your life. And that's what I've learned is I am a very different mom to my kids now than I was before. My kids are now just turned 27, almost 24 and 16. And the older two are like, you weren't like that to us. And I'm like, sorry. But I'm a way different person than I was when you were 16. And yeah, I do parent her differently. So it is such a journey. And I think it's important for our younger generations to watch us evolve into different people than they knew before. And so many people get stuck on, there are probably people who still think you are the same person you were in high school because that's who they knew you as. That's them. That's their journey. It's not your journey. And I think we find that hard as we get older, like to say, oh, I don't have that big circle of friends anymore. And, you feel like, oh, nobody likes me. But that's not true. You just haven't found those people yet that are on the same spot in their journey as you are. Some of my friends are 70s and 80s, and I'm in my 50s. So it's about finding people who are closer to your part of the journey than those other people who are still in their high school belief systems.
Thank you, Karen Dean.
Thank you.
I will put a link to Karen's book in the show notes. And please, she would love to hear from you. I know if you're looking for a speaker who will talk about how to be unbreakable.
Mm-hmm. And I have one more thing that I want to say, especially for the women, but even for the men. When you're having a really hard day and you look in that mirror, actually, I do have a picture of me when I was 5, and I look at that picture and think, wouldn't that little girl be so proud of me right now? And so a lot of us say, what will we tell our younger selves? But I like to look at it that way, is that little 5-year-old girl, the picture I'm thinking of, I'm standing in a bikini trying to pose like a model, and I look so scared and insecure, like someone's forcing me to do it, which they probably were. But that little girl would be so proud of me right now. Because that little girl would not even, she used to hide behind her mom when her mom tried to introduce her to people. So I challenge people to do that, to look at a picture of you when you were little and go, yeah, that little person would be so proud of me.
On that note, we will hit stop recording. Thank you again, Karen.
Thank you.